Good morning, everyone. I'm Weather and Radar Meteorologist Becca Parker. We are going to be going over the impacts expected from now Hurricane Lee that is just off the East Coast. Many of you, especially across the Northeast, might already be seeing those outer clouds that are streaming away from the center of Lee. Lee's a big system, so we're going to be going over the kind of impacts that everybody's going to be feeling across New England and into the Northeast. Even though we're not expecting a U.S. landfall from Lee, it'll be more into the Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia area as far as an actual landfall, but Lee is big. So impacts are going to be felt in a lot of places, even just extending out from its center. So those in New England and the Northeast, or if you know anybody in New England and the Northeast, be sure to share this video with them, whether it's right now or later, just so they can get the updates, and have them subscribe so they can get all the latest updates here today, especially. Because we're going to be going over exactly what they can expect from Lee and what they're going to see throughout the rest of today and into the weekend as well. I dropped the link to download Weather and Radar, the app that we have all of our information on. Is totally free, and there's a lot of different features that we're going to be sharing throughout the day as well, especially for Lee, so you can get all the latest information on that too. And also drop your questions in the chat as well. I'll be checking that throughout the live. If you have a question, it's likely somebody else has the exact same question. So just keep that in mind, and I'll be checking that throughout the time. Alrighty, now that we've gone over the housekeeping, let's get down to Lee. So what we're seeing, you can see the weather radar here. This is available on your app if you want to follow along. Lee is a large system, so you can see the center of Lee, just to the northwest of Bermuda. You can see my cursor there. This is the center of Lee, and it's churning in a counterclockwise form. And those outer clouds that I was talking about earlier, you can see here right across New England and extending all the way up into Maine. So many in Vermont and across eastern New York City, and even to New Jersey here are starting to see those outer clouds from Lee as it does move northward. Now, again, we're not expecting a U.S. landfall from Lee as it is moving northward and then to the northeast, but Lee's large, so we're going to be seeing a lot of impacts from it anyway. Let's see what else too here. Let me double check my notes. I want to talk about what we're seeing with Lee currently. So from the latest update, Lee has winds. It's a Category 1 hurricane with winds at 85 miles per hour with higher gusts. And it is also the hurricane force winds. I mentioned Lee's large. Hurricane force winds extend out 105 miles from the center. So anywhere 105 miles in that radius from the center, but then tropical storm force winds of at least 39 miles per hour upwards into the 70 mile per hour zone extend out more than 300 miles. So this thing's large. That's why we're seeing those impacts in the New England area and into the especially into down east Maine from Lee later tonight and into the weekend as well. Let's take a look here too. So we want to talk about the waves as well coming off of Lee. That's going to be a big issue. We're going to get into more detail on that later. But from Lee, because it's so big, because of the strength of it, it has waves near its center of more than 40 feet high. So think about that coming too. So luckily that's at the center, and we're not going to see 40-foot waves along the coast, luckily. But again, it just shows the impact of Lee and its strength. So something to keep an eye on as we go throughout the day. Let me show too. We were talking about how big that wind field was. You can see it right here on the wind radar once it pops up here. Just loading. Here we go. You can see gusty winds are extending all the way down into the Carolina coast here, into the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, and even into New Jersey, New York, eastern New York, and into New England, starting to see these gusty winds extending all the way out from Lee. And it's pretty far away currently. So huge storm. And it is just to the northwest of Bermuda. And Bermuda is still seeing tropical storm force conditions today, even though it is moving to the north still, just because of the large system. Before we get into a couple more details, I'm going to double check on any questions. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, if you have any questions, just let us know. And I'll be checking them throughout the day too. You can comment on the video later today as well. Double check to make sure there's no other questions, so we can keep you informed through the situation. So, when it comes to Lee, let's take a look at the cone of uncertainty here. Let me bring this up. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. This is from the National Hurricane Center, so you can see that cone of uncertainty here. The thing about the cone of uncertainty is what that means is, yes, we have the icons for hurricane, tropical storm moving about the middle, but the eye of that hurricane or storm could be anywhere from the edge of this cone. over to the right, to the left, to the bottom, top. It could be anywhere in those areas. That's why you don't want to just follow just the center of that cone, because it could be the center of that storm could be over on the other side of it as well. So something to keep in mind when you're looking at these cones when we go throughout the rest of hurricane season, which we've just passed peak season. That was in about 5 days ago in September 10th. So we've just passed peak season, which means we're still kind of in peak season for hurricane season. So, and this goes on until the end of November as well. So we got a while to go. So something to think about if you don't already know that for the cone of uncertainty. But anyway, let's look more at Lee. So the current path is northward, then it's going to skirt off to the northeast. It is expected to weaken as it moves into the northern cooler waters of the Atlantic here. But we see, because of its size, again, remember I showed you that wind radar image of just the extent of the winds extending all the way out 320 miles from its center, tropical storm force winds. We have tropical storm warnings extending from New England all the way up into down East Maine, but even hurricane watches across down East Maine, even into Atlantic Canada and Nova Scotia here. So that's for the possibility that hurricane conditions are possible within the next 36 hours as Lee does move northward. Even though we expect it to continue weaken, it's always possible. So we do have those watches and warnings extending all the way from New England into down East Maine, all the way through Nova Scotia as well. So those under those tropical storm warnings, if you've not received a tropical storm warning, just make sure you have your alerts turned on your device. You should also see on your Weather and Radar app, there's a tropical weather alert as well that'll tell you what you can expect from these systems right on your homepage. So make sure you have those switched on as well to get the latest information too. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and talk about where or what we expect to see from Lee as it does move northward today. And impacts are really going to start later today as we get into the beginning of the weekend here. So let's talk about storm surge first. Storm surge is water being pushed in by the system into the coast. And so we're going to be seeing 1 to 3 feet of storm surge that's on top of high tide. So think about what your high tide levels usually are for this time of the month, time of the year, what the high tide levels usually are based on the cycle of the moon, and you're going to be able to add on top of that the storm surge, 1 to 3 feet on top of that. So we expect to see some coastal flooding, coastal erosion, and it could be life-threatening should this water move in. So those along the coast want to pay extra attention to any watches or warnings that are in their area for storm surge especially, and then you're just going to have the other impacts on top of that. So we got more to go through. But be sure to turn around, don't drown. If you see water covering a roadway, you have no idea that roadway is underneath it. It may be an area that you're used to driving through if there's water over it, but roadways often, especially if they're impacted by flooding, and this area has seen a lot of rain this week, when they're impacted by flooding, the road might not be under there. It might be might not be underneath that water, so you could be driving into something that's very dangerous. So just turn around, go somewhere else, or just get up into a higher elevation, a higher ground. Away from the flooding. Flooding causes the most deaths when it comes to these situations too, so something to keep an eye out for. All right, storm surge, 1 to 3 feet, coastal erosion, we just went through that. Okay, and that's extending all the way up from Long Island all the way into the Canada-US border as the storm does move in. Let's take a look at the wave situation here. So, let's stop this real quick. This is the wave simulator, the wave forecast from Lee. This is across New England, eastern New England here, getting to the Cape Cod area and Martha's Vineyard. So we expect to see wave action increasing over the next several hours, in the next 36 hours or so, as Lee does move up. And again, because it's got those gusty winds, it's such a large system, we're going to have some big wave action, even along the coast, as it does move in. So let's take a look here. I'm going to double check something. Okay, perfect. Alright, so we're going to see that wave action moving in along the coast. We have waves 6 to 10 feet, even extending here from Long Island all the way into eastern Massachusetts and up into Rhode Island area as well. But we do see a lot more wave action here as Lee does move to the north. That's going to be moving into Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod, coastal areas of the New England area. So this is out offshore a little bit. We've got waves higher than 20 feet, but 15, 18 feet is not out of the question here along the coast here. So those who are going to be receiving this kind of system, If you're not evacuating, if you're not moving out into higher ground, you're going to be seeing this wave action in addition to storm surge too. So a lot of coastal erosion coming from Lee as it does move northward. Now let's take a look at Maine as well. Let's pull this forward. The simulator. Okay, there we go. So you can see as Lee does move northward and then eventually veers off to the northeast, waves out here, very far offshore, but just shows the intensity of this system, getting up to about more than 30-foot waves out here. So closer to shore, you're going to be seeing, 12 to 16-foot waves. So that's going to cause even more coastal erosion, like I mentioned before here, along coastal Maine as well. So going to be seeing a lot of choppy waters. We've already been seeing that some marinas are being cleared out and boats are being taken out of the water. And you can expect that you're going to be seeing a lot of coastal flooding, not just because of the surge, but because of the wave action too. So it's going to be a lot going on here. All right, let's look also. I'm just checking my list to make sure we're going over everything we want to take a look at here. All righty. Let's take a look at the rainfall that's coming from Lee. Now let me go back to what the National Hurricane Center is showing here, just so we can get a good idea. Now we do expect most of the rain to be falling across the Northeast, Eastern New England, and up into Maine, but Maine especially, as because Lee will be closer to that area and pushing all that water in, falling as rainfall as well. Think about that on top of storm surge, wave action. You got a lot of rain too. So. And this area, again, has received a lot of rain recently. So areas into Maine here could see, especially tomorrow, could see 3 to 6 inches of rain in addition to the impacts that are already being seen from Lee tomorrow. And you could see anywhere from 1 to 3 inches across eastern New England area as well. And it won't take much. Like I said earlier, we've had a lot of rain recently across New England especially. So any area that has seen rain recently might not be able to take in water very quickly. So it could lead to runoff, lead to the flooding as well. So just something to keep an eye on. All right, we're also going to go over the winds. Let me bring back up the wind radar to show you how you can follow along on your app so you can see exactly the impacts to be expected from Lee right from your phone. All right. So let's take a look at the forecast on the wind radar. You can see here Lee starting to move northward. It's just off the coast of the mid-Atlantic, and this is 1 p.m. this afternoon Eastern time. Let's take a look at later today. We're going to be seeing increasing gusts here along New England's coast and getting into Maine as Lee does move northward. This is 9 p.m. Eastern this evening, and winds really start to kick up here across New England's coast into Maine as well, and even into Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada up here. So let's take a look at when it gets to its closest point. We'll start with New England as Lee does move in. All right, let's take a look at these winds here. And you can zoom in just like this on your app as well, so you can see just how fast these winds are going to be. And these are wind gusts. So Barnstable sets Cape Cod, 60 mile per hour wind gusts here coming off from Lee. And you're going to see 20 to 30, even 40 mile per hour winds across eastern New England here. Boston, 36 mile per hour. This is 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. So a lot of people are going to be hearing those winds whistle as they're waking up tomorrow morning. And the wind's blowing through. And you can even see here as Lee does move northward that we're seeing increasing gusts here into down east Maine and across much of coastal Maine here and into Nova Scotia. And it will start to make its northeast turn eventually here, and you'll see these winds kind of go down across New England about lunchtime tomorrow. But into Maine, you're going to still be seeing those major impacts. All right, let's get into what tomorrow looks like too. All right, let's take a look at a little bit closer. So Portland, 47 mile per hour gusts. Bangor's going to be seeing 46 mile per hour gusts down in East Maine. Very gusty winds as well into the 40 and 50 mile per hour zone. So a lot of power outages are expected from this, down trees, down lines. Anything that is not anchored to the ground, if you've got things that are able to fly around easily in the wind outside, today is the day to go ahead and either bring that indoors or put heavy things on top of it so it does not turn into something that could cause damage or injury to anybody if you got stuff outside. So that's something you want to keep an eye on too. Alrighty. All right, we've gone over the main impacts that are coming from Lee. I'm going to double check any questions before I move on here. We're going to wrap up. Okay, awesome. All right, let's take a look at just what's going on in the full Atlantic picture. Let's see here. Perfect. Transition over. All right, so you see Lee. We already have gone over that. We've seen Lee right here. We've got Margot churning out here as a tropical storm, no threat to land. From Margot, it's actually going to move kind of in a clockwise motion and then move off to the northeast eventually here. But we do see these areas that we are watching for future development for these areas. So it's likely we do have Tropical Depression 15 in this area here, or we could be seeing that here in the next update, because there's already a really good chance that it could be developed here down into the tropical central Atlantic. But we're looking off the coast of Africa too for more development. Like I said earlier, we only just kind of got to peak season of hurricane season, so we've got a long ways to go. The water's warm. It's going to have some good energy to work off of, so something you want to pay attention to if you live along the coast in the Gulf. Even if you're all the way up in Maine, something you want to keep an eye on, obviously, because we've got Lee coming. So make sure you have 3 ways to receive weather warnings. You are updated and good to go for all the information you need. Again, we're going to be posting all day today on our social media. We've got our hub where you can gather all the resources you need in one spot right on your app for free. So you can get all those resources that you need for the Lee situation. And then just something to keep an eye on for later events that we have, including winter storms, severe weather as well. And we're going to have all those resources for you right on the app. All right. Now that there's no more questions, thank you all so much for joining me. And I will close out. Those who are in line for Hurricane Lee, good luck. And we're thinking about you.